I'm Pierre-Simon Ntiruhungwa for Silicon Students. Today we're here at Kohlberg Ventures offices with Bill Youstra, which is one of its partners, and for our second edition of our series of interviews in the Silicon Valley. So the principle that we gather questions from our community of students that I will ask to Bill. But first, thank you for having us. And can you, at the beginning, tell us a little bit more about yourself, about what you do, and then I'll ask you the other question that I have.
Okay, sure. So I'm a venture partner at Kohlberg Ventures. I spent half my time doing that, which is sourcing and deals and helping manage the portfolio at Kohlberg Ventures. And then I spent another half of my time working with small startups independently of that. Kohlberg Ventures has three practices: digital media, consumer products, and clean technology. In clean technology, we have investments in Clear Edge Power, which is a hydrogen fuel cell company. That's great. You get a device about the size of a refrigerator, stick it outside of a building, and it powers the building, and then provides hot water as well. I won't get into all of our investments, but the clean tech ones tend to be pretty capital intensive, as you would imagine. I actually focus on the digital media side, and I find that very broadly. We've got investments in companies like Halogen, which is a digital services marketing group. We've got Real Gravity is a video marketplace, and a few others, and you can see them on our website.
Okay. And you're more focused on business to consumers, or business to business, or you don't mind for the digital media part?
Yeah, so it generally it varies. We're not particularly strict with respect to whether it's B2B or B2C. What's unique, I think, a little bit about Kohlberg is we're relatively rigid around wanting to understand or wanting to know that somebody will actually pay for the product or service that's being offered. So there are a number of ventures out there right now, particularly in the digital media side, that are really quite compelling and profound, and yet it's unclear how you make them a dollar by offering that service or product. And so we would not invest in that. And probably to our detriment in many cases. There's a lot of wealth created through those ventures. It's just not something that we say yes to. So whether the consumer will pay for something or whether another business will pay for it, we just want to know that somewhere is going to pay.
Okay, great. So I'm here for Silicon Students, which is a French initiative. Mm-hmm. So my first question will be, and that a lot of French will-be entrepreneurs can have, is as we're looking a lot at the Silicon Valley, maybe we can think about setting up here. Settle here. So what will be the best way for French will-be entrepreneurs to be able to approach an American VC?
Well, the best way for anyone to approach a VC is to work through your own network. If you know someone, because we get a lot of inbound deals, and it's hard for us to look at them, and if someone else has provided some degree of validation by offering it to us, that makes a big difference. So, just get to know, and it can be from anywhere. It can be from a portfolio company, it could be from a student we've mentored, it could be from an exhibition or a competition or whatever, but just some avenue in. It's just not a cold PowerPoint that's mailed into the partnership. It makes a lot of sense. In terms of French students in particular, there's not I would say there's not something uniquely French or un-French about what we like or don't like. I think when I look at the kinds of deals that don't resonate, that seem unfinished, they tend to be the entrepreneurs would have been helped had they done some research and looked at what do standard presentations look like, what are the standard questions going to come back at you, and do you have appropriate responses for them, and are you realistic in the way you're pitching your venture. We want you to be an entrepreneur, to be delusional somewhat, appropriately delusional is what we want. You have to be a little bit crazy and dedicated and focused on something that no one else sees if you're going to be making anything of value. On the other hand, we also want someone who's going to be able to adapt and is somewhat influenceable, and so will sometimes take external input and sort of broaden their thinking. But if you're too broad, and if you listen to too many people, well, you'll never get anywhere. But if you're so narrow, it'll just be a nightmare. It's unlikely. You will continue to think that the consumer ought to behave the ways consumers are telling you they don't want to behave, and you'll just keep driving the bus off the road. So something in between there, and I think the way that exhibits itself in terms of an entrepreneur approaching an investor is, a mix of conviction, strong due diligence on the industry and the solution that they're creating, but also a willingness to listen and, have a few different alternative or having a roadmap that demonstrates a broadening set of opportunities versus just this fixation on a single point.
Okay, so for instance, the French person will have to approach you, grow their networks in the US to be able to get you, and then trying to show that they have these qualities to be able to pitch.
Right. And there's there are enough French people here who can serve as the conduit for the deals. French executives. I'm involved in a company with where one of the first investors is in France, and sits in on the board meetings, and so there are lots of different ways to come in. You don't have to fully assimilate. You do need one avenue.
Okay. Thanks. Sure. And my next question, you answered it a little bit. It was about the main qualities you're looking for in entrepreneurs.
Yes.
So maybe there will be one that you had to, that will be most important than the other, when talking about the entrepreneur itself. Yeah,
I would say persistence. Persistence above anything else. Just we'll drive. Keep going. When they hit an obstacle, they get up and they go around it, through it, or knock it down. And that's the number one. I look for tactical abilities above strategic vision. You'll hear often, if you have this conversation, you'll hear that ideas are cheap. They are, but the execution really matters. Yes. So someone who's really shows that they can stay focused and get it done. And so if they've demonstrated they've done so in the past, that's quite compelling. And it gets a little bit back to the discussion we had about the pitch. If the pitch reflects that as well, if someone's sort of very proprietary and careful about their idea, that says something to me. It sort of says that they don't quite get that balance yet. And they probably also haven't done this before, because pretty quickly you learn that doesn't help you.
Okay, thanks. And you talk about the fact that somebody must be open so you can be part of the evolution of the product of the company. And so, because something which is really interesting, even for the startup when raising money, is like the mentorship they can have. But what about a company that would think that they don't really need money, but that they need mentorship? Should they raise money? Even if they feel they don't really need money?
Right. First, I think one question is, can you get mentorship without money?
Yeah.
And there are vehicles for accomplishing that, and they're usually around universities. And again, there's an advisory. It's quite common for a company to have a list of advisors, and those advisors will get a small piece of equity in exchange for their mentorship and advice along certain different domains. So you certainly don't have to take investors' money for mentorship, but people do. So people do. In a lot of cases, what you gain access to is sort of more serious mentorship, where people really have skin in the game. So they'll tell you the uncomfortable truths that you don't want to hear, and they'll push you and they'll influence you, perhaps outside of your comfort zone. But there are a number of companies where they get funded and they take the money and they put it in the bank and they don't really touch that money. And in a lot of cases, it's not specifically for mentorship alone. It's for access to the investor's Rolodex. It's for the credibility that comes with having that investor. So when you go out to do your business development, you can say, you know, these are our investors, and that really validates your company.
Yes.
And you know, they'll pick up the phone. So there's an array of benefits separate from the money that can be quite useful to an entrepreneur, and mentorship is one of them.
Okay.
But if it's only mentorship, yeah, I think I'd exhaust those other channels before I would raise just for mentorship.
Okay, you must be willing to want all
Yeah.
other advantages you can get.
I would say, yeah, some other. You know, and the credibility is a big one. You know, because it depends. It also depends on what your business is. If it's a business that's highly fragmented and highly competitive right now, then that credibility is quite differentiated. On the other hand, if it's a slower arena and you've got a very distinct, highly differentiated product or service, it doesn't matter so much. You're going to get the phone calls, and if you can finance the business out of operations, then there's no need.
Okay, thank you
Sure.
for the answer. Now I'd like to go a bit more about your investment policies. Since last month, we have witnessed the downgrade of Standard & Poor's from the AAA to AA+ from the US. Does it has changed a little bit about your investment policy, or not at all?
So, yes, there's an impact. In general, there's a couple stages of impact for venture funds, and it depends, for instance, on the situation within the fund itself, how much cash is available, and then the portfolio, whether the companies are going to need cash, because you start to look at certain companies that this now stretches out their break-even period to the point where they may need more cash. So venture firms may withhold cash for that and be a bit more vigilant in the new in placing money in new ventures. There's also the limited partner side with most funds. You got limited partners who may or may not be more forthcoming. In extreme cases, they may not actually make their capital calls.
Yes.
So you've had those cases where limited partners aren't giving money to the venture funds, which then, of course, don't have the capital to give to their existing funds. So just the raw plumbing of it says that anytime there's an interruption in the upstream flow, then everybody has to behave differently. That said, the 2008 interruption was very extreme and dramatic. This one is pretty dramatic, but I think less abrupt. We're still in a long, I think, period of uncertainty with respect to that supply of money into the sector. But the crazy thing is that's juxtaposed with one of the most fertile and volatile times of invention and creativity in new business models, new businesses, new products that we've ever seen. So we're benefiting from the capital efficiency, the fact that it takes a lot less money to create a new venture. There's also a sort of a bubble right now on the digital media side of investor activity. I think the creativity will validate the macro level of spend going against it, but I think on an individual investor level, it could turn out to be relatively ugly. So I think we have sort of 3-4 crazy dynamics at play right now, creating a very volatile ecosystem. And I think that dynamic, the fact that we had an interruption in August around the U.S. debt rating and the debt ceiling, that's some external volatility, but I also think there's plenty of internal volatility as well. And I think that will probably they all govern folks' attitudes. A lot of our funds, we look very closely at what the returns will look like. As I said before, we tend to look at how much about the visibility of revenue, that somebody's actually going to pay for revenue, or rather pay for the product or service that's offered. in a lot of cases, though, you're really seeing prices driven up for these values driven up on these companies in ways that's pretty hard to justify, other than them being some sort of profound home run hit, and it just doesn't seem that there's going to be room for that many home run hits. But I do think there will be room for some incredible innovation that will build the layer for the next round of value creation.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe to finish, if you have something to add, maybe a little advice for entrepreneurs, or or to encourage them to start their own company.
Yeah, I would. So I grew up on the East Coast near Washington, D.C., and what's amazing to me about Silicon Valley is the people who walk into this office with just this presumption that they're going to build this thing and they're going to solve this problem, which from where I grew up is sort of foreign. Where I grew up, you would go and you would take a job and you would do the thing you were taught to do, and then you would do it a little bit better the next year and a little bit better the next year.
Yeah, the same in France in general.
So there's something that's sort of occurred over 50 years in Silicon Valley or more that has made this the norm, that people sort of wake up, roll out of bed, something doesn't work quite right, and they just decide they're going to fix it versus they're just going to go on. And it's great, refreshing and invigorating. And the truth is, you can, if you have some discipline and some persistence against the products that or the problem you've identified, you can absolutely solve this. So any advice I would give, I'm afraid, would be cliched and repetitive of what so many people say. But it's, if you've got the right risk appetite, if you're happy to jump in and embrace the uncertainty of starting a venture, if your personal composition is such that it's something you're attracted to, then go for it, because the rewards are fantastic. Even as I said before, on a company by company basis, even if your company flames out, you will be all set for your next company and your next company and your next company. And there are many, many examples of that. I mean, Zynga, Mark Pincus with Zynga, if you sort of look at his trajectory, the companies that the ups and downs he's navigated, but you see a consistent sort of spine and persistence and drive and an appropriate amount of delusion, as I said, to push forward. So, just do it. Just jump in, solve your problems, stay open-minded, don't be excessively delusional, but just push. And you'll be shocked. I do think that this is the best time in history. And I spent a lot of time with AOL in the 90s when that was extraordinary, that whole period of time when the internet came online and we understood all the things that could happen on that platform. I think this is 10 times faster, and I really think the stage, maybe 2009, 2010 is when the stage was set for the degree of acceleration and innovation that we're going to see in the next decade. So unfortunately it coincides with an economic slowdown and issues with other financial markets and segments. But the technology is there, the products are there, the people are there, and so if you just have the conviction and push forward, there's an opportunity to create great value.
Well, thank you very much, Bill, for giving us a little of your time. I think it will be helpful, and I hope it will be helpful for French entrepreneurs.
Good, yes, I hope so. All right, take care.